Hi, guys. I'm Sarah, and I serve here at Victory in the church office. We're so glad that you tuned in to today's message, and I believe that something in this sermon is going to help encourage you and help you take the next step forward in your faith journey. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you never miss a video. Now let's hear from the sermon.
You know, when we read this, and it's pretty obvious that these are not good people, Hophni and Phinehas, and their father Eli is thrown into the mix because he knew it was happening. He knew it was happening. He tried to correct it, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but he let it happen, and my guess is that it wasn't just these two necessarily acting in this way. They're probably the worst offenders because there are more than just 3 priests. There's a whole tribe of priests. But whenever they were on duty, it was really, really ugly. And so what you can hear about them, and so with that first word in 2 verse 12 says they were scoundrels. Other translations that you may have, or if you have open with you, might say base and worthless. Wicked, despicable, dishonest, and evil. And the reason why they were like this is really simple. They didn't know the Lord. And if you don't know someone, truly know them, even though they're in the house, this is what's bugging me, is that they're in the house of the Lord. This is where they worked every day, and they didn't know the Lord. They did not regard him. They did not respect him. I remember my dad used to say about Charlton Heston. If you remember him as an actor, I really don't know much about him, his faith life. My dad was like, he was in some incredible faith movies. The 10 Commandments, Ben-Hur. How come none of it sunk in? Because he's around the material, but it never seemed to sink in. And here you've got these guys who are serving the Lord, and they were awful. Just awful. And unfortunately, I think probably because of them, pastors' kids have been labeled ever since, right? And so, Isaiah, you're good, man. I think we're good. All right. If stories start coming out, all right. But we see this when we look at this kind of person. And we look at Phinehas and we look at Hophni. They're just awful, just gross people. And we see this in their boorish behavior. One, they were abusing their power. And some of you know what it feels like when you deal with people who abuse power. It could be not just church, but it's really just about anywhere. You try to avoid that person. You don't want anything to do with them. If you go to the DMV, you just kind of hope they're not on duty that day. So I imagine the people coming into town were just hoping, okay, I am praying, I'm giving my sacrifice today. I'm really praying that it's not Phinehas and Hophni on duty. And they would get them, but they were horrible. And their boorish behavior, they violated, think about things, just think about it. They violated people's worship time. They were coming to the house of the Lord to give thanksgiving to God for what he's done for them. It'd be like me if we said, hey, somebody said, hey, where do I put my offering? Comes up to me and says, where do I put my offering? And I see that it's cash, and I just go, oh, just give it to me. Okay, and by the way, I don't touch the money. Very, very strict personal policy for that. Don't touch it. It always makes me feel good. I'm always like, put it in the box. I don't want to touch it. Just put it in the box. But they brought their thank offerings to the Lord, and they would take part of it. And now, he tells us, that the whole system that God set up was, that the priests would get part of the offerings because that's what their work was. Of all the 12 tribes of Israel, the Levites were separated out from the rest of them. The rest of them went and took the land. They went and took the promised land. But they said, the Levites, you don't get any land. You'll have cities that you can live in, but you don't get land because that's your farm, your agriculture, all those things. That's how you make your money. But you've got a different job. And your job is to serve here in the temple or the tabernacle. This is where you serve. You've got other work to do. You can't go out and do these other things. But I'm still going to, God's saying, but I still love you and I'm going to provide for you. And he talks about later in the Old Testament, if the people are doing well and they're giving like they're supposed to give, you're going to be well taken care of. Because a portion is set aside for you and your family of the meat, the grain. This portion is set aside for you. But this part is mine. Well, Phinehas and Hophni, they took what was God's. They took what was God's. And they were upsetting and devaluing and just to their worship time, to the people's worship time. And then if they didn't get their way, what did they do? They threatened them with physical violence. We will beat you. If somebody calls you out, no, this isn't yours. This belongs to the Lord. And then we will send our goons on you. There's just a couple of goons. That's ours, and we'll take it by force. But then on top of that, they were sleeping with the women who were serving in the house of prayer, in the tent of meeting. They were sleeping with the women there. And if you know ancient customs and times, different religions and different gods, pagan gods would have temple prostitutes. And they could be male or female. And they would sex was a big part of their religion. This is not the same. Because in God's ancient world of his people, there were women who served, who gave away their lives because they wanted to dedicate them to service to the Lord. The ancient version of nuns. And these men, from their position of power and abuse of power, treated this collection of wonderful women as their own harem. And if it was a secret, it was a very poorly kept secret because the word was out. It's almost to the point of being brazenish, and they were just, who's going to stop us kind of feel to it. They were gross, just gross people. Do you deal with gross people? There are gross people in the world. Could be your job, could be in the church, unfortunately, and makes it worse. I said it could be in the church, and you just look at history. You know it's there. You know it's there. Recent history, not so recent history, ancient history, it's there. But it really just highlights the fact that any institution that has power and influence will attract people who want to take hold of it for self-gain. Can we put that slide up? Any institution that has power and influence will attract people who want to take hold of it for self-gain. And like I said, it's not just limited to the church. We all know places where abuse happens. And we all have a sphere of influence. We all have power. We all have something like that. And you can either use that power as God designed it to serve, or sometimes people use that power to abuse, to make themselves feel better, or for whatever reason, to set themselves up as something more than they are. So what do you do with people like this? What do you do with it? There are people who just seem to spoil the community. People who seek power and control and end up driving other people away. Again, it shows up in all, I can starting to think through all right now, like the catalog of all the different places that I've seen it happen, the different places I've experienced where people look for power and control. So what do you then do, though, with people who try to forcefully take hold of God's church? Like I said, it happens here, it happens in the world around us, but what happens, what do you do when it happens here? What do you do? Eli actually at this moment tries to do the right thing. He tries to do the right thing. Well, actually, I'd say he does the right thing. It wasn't effective, but he did the right thing. He rebukes them. He rebukes his sons. He calls them out. He should have done it a lot earlier. You can make that argument for sure. But he rebukes them. And a rebuke is just simply an expression of sharp disapproval or criticism. And a rebuke is actually an important part of Christian community. Paul talks about it. He writes about it. Jesus talks about it. That we all have spheres of influence. But there are times when we are not serving, but we're abusing our power. And the power of a rebuke, and the intent of a rebuke, is to show someone, not to just point out, hey, you're at wrong and at fault, and to judge people. It's about showing somebody bad behavior, the danger of said behavior, and to win them back to the Lord and his ways, and that they may receive forgiveness, and then community is restored through grace. You tell the truth with grace, and then it's restored with grace, and it becomes healthy again. Our problem sometimes is that we get really trigger happy. You know, Paul writes, he says this, he says, all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. The idea of rebuking is to correct people to help bring a more fruitful life. You can call it maybe pruning a tree or something like that, pruning a vine. So you can correct behavior to provide a more fruitful life. And one of the things that we can take away from this is that you should always humble yourselves then to God's word. Humble yourselves to God's word, because if you're rebuked, and according to God's word, either through your own conviction while you're sitting and reading the word, or somebody approaches you with it, always humble yourself to God's word. Because Jesus talks about it. He just says, hey, there's times you're going to have to rebuke people. You show somebody your sin. We tend to be too trigger happy. There's a methodical, okay, thank you, a methodical approach to it where we're usually quick to shoot. There's a methodical approach where you say, hey, buddy, I just need to point out something to you that happened. I love you, but this happened, just between the two of us. And then nobody else knows. We usually tend to tell everybody else, and then we tell the person. No, just tell the person first. And then if they don't listen, then you bring another person alongside of you that says, another trusted voice. And they're like, hey, dude, no, this is really happening. This is not good for you, not good for the community. And then if they still don't listen, then you bring another group of people in, and another group of people, and another group of people. But the whole time is to preserve somebody, their reputation, to help bring them back into the fold so they can have grace and mercy. And so we humble ourselves to God's word. Problem is that for Eli's sons, they would not listen to their father. Everybody else knew about it. It was on display. It made it into the Bible. We know about it. So what happens when a person won't listen? We focus on your job and you let God do his. Like I said, we're so often ready to just pull the trigger, judge and jury. And God has been very clear, no, there's a methodical approach to this, and let me handle my job. Let me do my work. You do your work, I will do mine. And I'll tell you, in 25 years of ministry, like the first thing I tell people, some young pastor might come to me. It's very hard to think, oh, I'm not young anymore, but they come to me, and any advice, I'm like, patience. You have to allow God to do his work, because there's all sorts of anxiety. People will want to do things. They will do this and do that, and aren't you going to respond to this? And no, you got to do things methodically and in prayer and let God do his work. And it reminds me of the story that Jesus told. And Jesus told the people a parable, and I love it. It's from Matthew chapter 13. And to me, this is very eye-opening for me about do your job and let God do his. Jesus told them, the people that are gathered, another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where did these weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Well, do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you're pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." His disciples then again came to him and said, "Can you explain this to us? Because I love the parables where Jesus then explains it. So there's no guesswork in what's happening." So Jesus answered them. He said, "Well, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man." And he's talking about himself. "The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the people of the kingdom." So when we think about people of the kingdom, it's not just our little kingdom in church. We're talking the kingdom. All churches, all believers, everywhere of all time. The kingdom. The weeds are the people of the evil one. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are the angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels. They will weed out his kingdom, everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the blazing fire, into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears, let them hear. And I love that last little phrase there. It's like a rebuke. Are you going to listen or aren't you going to listen? Whoever has ears, you better listen. If you claim to have ears, but you're not hearing what I'm saying, do you really have ears? Because if you really had ears, you'd be listening to what I'm saying right now and be making sense to you. And what he's saying, there is life that happens amongst the kingdom of God. That there will be people like Phineas, and there will be people like Eli, there will be people like Hophni, there will be people throughout the course of history who are going to be part of the community. He says the seed comes out, it gets planted, the weeds are growing at the same time. We know that when seeds get put out there, it doesn't happen overnight that they sprout up. It takes time, so it will show itself. It will show itself, and then it says it starts forming heads, and when it starts forming heads, meaning it starts to bend over, the weed's not forming any grain, so it starts to stick up, and you're like, there it is. And we can get upset about it and frustrated about it. Where did these come from? It shouldn't be like this. We see it happening in our own life, our own community, like we need to take care of that weed. God's response is, no, I'll handle it. Let me handle it. Because by you going after it, you're going to damage some of the other things. Because a person is never just a weed in and of themselves. They're connected into the ground, roots are intertwined, all of it comes together. There's friendships involved, there's people involved. So if you hurt somebody's friend prematurely, you could start a chain reaction and things get hurt and things get damaged. Instead, do it methodically. So you're going to need to approach it, like Jesus said, do it methodically. There's a pattern to this. You want to preserve somebody, not just be quick to pull the trigger and yank it out. You want to preserve things and let me do my work. I am the judge, not you. So whoever has ears, then let them hear. God will sort it out. Has there ever been an instant in time where God hasn't had it figured out already? Has there? No. Man, just look at it. All this whole villain talk we've been talking about some really horrible people. God took care of every single one of them. It's in His time and in His judgment. And next week we're going to talk about another villain that probably people wanted to snuff out, and thank God God did not follow their advice. But that's next week. God will sort it out. God took care of Eli's sons. They both went out to war. They're representing God in the temple, but not really, because they weren't godly men. They went out there and they both died in battle on the same day. News came back to Eli, hey, guess what? Your sons died. In shock, he fell back in his chair, hit his head, died. God took care of it. God, when God says He's going to do something, He does something. He took care of Eli's sons. He took care of Eli. He established Samuel out of the womb of a person who was barren, a woman who had not had children for years. Does that sound familiar? She couldn't have children. She couldn't have children, and God established Samuel. Mere men cannot stop or derail the Lord's almighty plan and purpose. The disciples thought it was all going to hell on Good Friday. They were despondent, they were depressed, they were sad, they were anxious, they were fearful, probably angry. All these emotions were roiling up that how could this happen? And Jesus says, it's all right, I got it. I got it. Part of the plan. Men cannot stop or derail the Lord Almighty's plan and purpose. And that includes me. That includes you. So it's very important then, if you hear a rebuke from another believer or in your own time with God's Word, as a person of all of us, our power, influence, humble yourselves to God's Word.